Meeting to address the position of the deputy clerk. And so I'm going to start with a motion, and we can have discussion and go from there. Brief background, there was instruction to deal with the League of Minnesota Cities and basically start the process over. I decided to defer to previous discussions and rather than start over, move forward with the candidate that was supported by 2 of the 3 members on the interview committee. So my motion, it's important that we move forward with focusing on the important work of the city. We've spent enough time discussing this. With the understanding of the variety of clerical and financial responsibilities that have been discussed for the deputy clerk position and recognizing Paul and Corey's enthusiastic recommendation, I move that we hire Ellen Lent as the deputy clerk at $19 per hour to fulfill currently designated deputy clerk responsibilities and any additional responsibilities as identified by the clerk treasurer and the city council. As part of my motion, I include the following provisions. It's understood one of the deputy clerk's roles is to record, transcribe, and publish accurate meeting minutes in a timely fashion, and I have this all for you. So,
Okay, yeah.
record, transcribe, and publish accurate meeting minutes in a timely fashion. Interpretation, criticism, or judgmental statements are not acceptable in the meeting minutes or in discussions amongst staff regarding decisions made by the mayor and city council regarding city business. I bring this up because it did come up during the interview process. Every successful organization requires respect in words and deeds for those in positions of authority. And when it comes to city staff and the general city business, the city council is that authority. As part of this motion, a formalized training plan shall be documented by the clerk treasurer and presented to the mayor and the city council for their approval by the June 7th city council workshop. This training plan shall include specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound objectives, as well as a timeline for successful achievement of this plan. Upon completion of the training, the deputy clerk shall demonstrate competence to perform required clerk treasurer duties in the clerk treasurer's absence. Among the measures that must be included in the performance evaluation for this position are the clear evidence of cultivating a professional, respectful office environment that values residents' involvement, appreciation of our many volunteers, excellent customer service, as well as a demonstration of the commitment to individual initiative and continuous improvement in their job responsibilities. And has been discussed at various times over the past year, I'm including in this motion transferring all city-related budgetary and clerical duties from the maintenance department to be the responsibility of the clerk treasurer and their assigned staff. In addition, those duties would also include identifying and incorporating appropriate tasks and responsibilities currently being performed by contracted staff that could be brought in-house. With these changes, updated job descriptions will be necessary. And I am moving that the clerk treasurer provide drafts of these updated job descriptions to the mayor and city council by June 15th for their review and comments, with final draft to be presented at the July workshop city council meeting. A rather long but tried to be complete motion.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion.
Mayor Peon.
Councilmember Rickert.
Couple things. Number one, it definitely would have been nice to have that prior to this meeting so we could see in writing what you discussed rather than trying to recall everything. So I'm kind of disappointed from that aspect. The other comment I want to make is you use respect a lot in there.
I did.
And to me, respect is a two-way street. So if we expect the respect from staff towards the council, I expect that same respect from the council to staff.
I agree. When I was looking at this, I was looking at it in light of a business. This we say that this isn't a business, but we're dealing with millions of dollars, and we're dealing with the same challenges that businesses do in a variety of ways. And I agree that it's important that management be respectful of staff and staff be respectful of management. It goes both ways. And we have talked about in our multitude of discussions this past few months, how that is important, and that primarily it starts with Corey and myself. Corey's the one that influences the staff primarily, and I have influence over council meetings. When they get out of hand, it's my job to bring them, to reel them back in. And it's my, I believe, as part of my duty, it's to remind people of what is respectful behavior, what is agreed upon conduct, both on the part of the council and on the part of staff. So I make a commitment to do everything within my power, and as part of the council, I think everybody agrees that we want to treat each other with respect in our words and deeds, and treat the staff with respect in words and deeds. But I expect, in that, I say I brought it up because I want to make sure that it's understood that the council, the majority of the council, but the council as a whole, is the authority in the staff situations. And so, in the same expectation I have that my boss will treat me with respect, I also have to understand that he is the authority, and I am required to treat him with that deference of his position, whether I agree with everything he decides on or not, or declares, or policies that he implements. I still have two choices. I either respect him, or I say I can't, I'm going somewhere else. But it is a two-way street, and I think it's imperative that we work on that. And conversations we've had, it starts with Corey and myself. And what we say, what we do, and what we require of those around us will determine whether we're successful or not. So, other discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
could you expand on a little bit what, on the reference to transferring budget and clerical duties to the clerk?
As part of our discussion, Paul and Corey and I had talked about this, and we've talked about it in general in council meetings, that we have a very valuable employee. We have multiple valuable employees, but what Joe brings to the city is extraordinary compared to what a lot of people in a maintenance position bring to other cities. And I think Joe has taken the brunt of some things that he's trying to do, some things that aren't in his expertise. And when we've had conversations with Corey, a lot of times the deputy clerk or the clerk treasurer will actually provide the documents from the maintenance department. That's not Joe's expertise. I think Joe is best served out on the roads with the equipment, repairing the equipment, identifying what he needs, and working with the staff there. But having Joe present budgets, having Joe be accountable for the clerical side of the maintenance department, I think is better served working through Corey and her staff. And we've had that discussion that in both bringing in activities that Liz is currently doing, or that Andy's doing, that we could do in-house more cost effectively and maybe more efficiently. As part of that, well, I think that same thing applies to the maintenance department. There's a number of things that Corey and her expertise can do a lot better than Joe can. And I think it would free up Joe from the expectation that he's doing this, to bringing that back in-house where those duties would be defined and assigned through Corey, and Corey would bring them to the council, rather than asking Joe to sit in the back of the room and off the cuff tell us something. So the preparation of budgets, the preparation of requests for action, those types of things would come through Corey or whoever she designates. Now, obviously, as she has been doing all along, Corey and Joe work well together. They have a lot of ideas on how to improve things. I wouldn't expect that Corey's going to know everything about what Joe's doing, but he would communicate to her, and she would be the one to make sure that it's budgeted for, that the expenditures are within the budget, and if there's a request or an explanation, that she would be the one giving it to the council. And how she does that, whether, she assigns it like she does, recycling center would be deputy clerk, road and bridge type things, that's up to Corey to define and designate. But I'm just saying that I think we're better served as a city, having Joe focus on what he does really well, and having the clerk department focus on what they do really well. Obviously, when Corey brings budgets to us, she doesn't make up numbers, she goes to Joe and says, what do you need, and they work it out. Corey's been here 16 years. She knows what needs to be done there. So.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
I think the only item that should be being discussed here, though, and be part of the motion is the hiring of the deputy clerk. If we're talking about redefining job descriptions, Joe's and the clerk's position stuff, that wasn't even on the agenda for today. That's a different meeting, and I don't think that should be part of this today. That's not what was posted. The deputy clerk's position is what's posted. That's all we should be dealing with. It's with that position, not redefining other job descriptions and who's doing what.
Well, and part of our discussion in the interview process and identifying what it is we were looking for in the deputy clerk, that has been part of the discussions all along. And I included in this because I think that is critical to what we're expecting. It has very specifically to do with the deputy clerk position. Because if we're hiring somebody for this position, and that's been part of the discussion as to why somebody, the qualifications of the people that were interviewed, that was one of the clear expectations, is there are going to be more responsibilities given to the clerk position. And it was clearly understood in our discussions that these responsibilities, where they can, because they've already been looking at what Ellen can do compared to what Liz is accountable for. Does Liz get an intern? Does some of the responsibilities move to Ellen? We've talked repeatedly about how do we help Joe be better at what he does. So I think that, and clearly, with that growth in this position in mind, the recommendation for Ellen to be able to cover that included not just what was done by Lori and Debbie previously, but the things that we need to move forward as a city. So that has been part of the discussion in the interview process. And part of the expectation of the qualifications was, and the recommendation is, Ellen is not only competent to do that, but she has been doing that. She's been taking initiative. She's been finding additional things to do in these particular areas. So I think it's germane to the clerk. The posting was for the deputy clerk position. This is the deputy clerk position. I'm just clarifying the expectations that have been discussed either at council or in the interview process, along with my motion to offer the job to Ellen.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
but it's more than that. You're changing job descriptions for 2 full-time employees that are existing full-time employees, and that's not part of this. And the other thing is the job description for the deputy clerk, we as a council have discussed that and approved that and posted it and decided that that's what we needed. That's the position that was needed. That's the position that was posted. And that's what we're hiring for. And that's what we should be, and that's what this meeting was posted for today. That's what we should be dealing with. If we're going to hire somebody, fine, let's hire them. And I don't disagree with looking at job descriptions and any place you work at. Things change, evolve, and jobs descriptions change, duties change, and we can look at that. But I don't think that should be part of today's discussion or part of this meeting, because that's not what we should be dealing with. The only thing that was posted was the deputy clerk position.
And I believe all those involve the deputy clerk. Because they involve the deputy clerk, it clarifies if we're going to incorporate with the deputy clerk position additional responsibilities from contracted services or from the maintenance department. I think it's germane to say, You know, why would we want to hire a person and say, now we're gonna change all this, and that person isn't qualified for that? And I think part of that is, the agreement was this person is qualified for that, and we're including this as part of the discussion. These are the growth items that we talked with Corey earlier this year on, and these are clearly going to be part of whoever ends up doing this, whether you delay it or not. You know, many times we get frustrated here because things get kicked down the road and we'll do this later. We've obviously, and I've been part of this, kicking us down the road to this point. We need to get over this, give Ellen the reassurance, Corey the reassurance that we're settled and we're moving forward, because we got a lot of things to concern ourselves with. And so I think it's germane. You know, I've tried to make sure that everything I addressed here is very specifically having to do with the deputy clerk position. I'm just saying that if we're going to assign things from the maintenance department and clarify what's actually been being done, because, you know, I think most of us recognize when Joe turns in a document that he did entirely by himself, and something that Corey or one of, you know, Lori or Debbie did, it's pretty obvious who created the document. It's been going on. We're recognizing the fact of what has been happening. We're saying that is, you know, the expectation that was communicated during the interviews was this is the full scope of what you'd be doing. There is, you know, the growth of the city, the growth of the department requires that we put our best people on where they're best suited.
Mayor Pilon.
Councilmember Ricker?
You know, I do agree with what Randy's saying to an extent, obviously. You know, our goal here was to hire the position. I understand also what you're trying to do because of me being a part of the whole process. But in conjunction with this, I would also, and it's not a motion for now, I think we need to put it on the agenda for next month's meeting, but we as a council need to start discussing and talking about what the entire council's vision is for the office, not just ours, and what those roles and responsibilities may or may not change. And I think we as a group need to start discussing that more as well and figuring out, you know, truly, again, based on conversations that we had, our conversation was to move toward almost more into an administrative role as well, you know, and, you know, is that the whole council's vision, you know? Because a part of what you're putting in the motion today is part of what we've discussed, which none of the rest of the council was privy to.
It's a good point, because you and Corey and I have had these discussions, and because of the way the process worked out, the rest of the council hasn't. And I agree that needs to be urgent on our agenda, because it's gonna affect how we budget this coming year. You know, how we structure the office staff responsibilities will definitely have an impact on how we budget for this coming year. So I think it's critical, because we'll be moving into that budget cycle very quickly here, and we need to have those decisions made. So I think it needs to be forefront on the next agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
it seems like clarifying and having the council approve what the staff has already been doing is probably a good thing. And if it hasn't been done before, it can certainly make some sense to have it in now, so that if Ellen is available to take on more tasks, that the council has basically said, yeah, by all means, work with Corey and let's take that on. We've already seen evidence, and I mean that's happening anyway. So why not just formalize it? I mean, I don't know who exactly did it, if it was, you know, Corey or Ellen or both, but, you know, Joe made the comment, you know, he didn't see any of the dust control or crack sealing bids, so that was all done as part of the packet. So the evidence is there that they have been able to do it and they can do it, so let's just formalize it and move forward.
Mayor Phelan.
Councilmember Ricker.
I guess the only other thing I have is, you know, in the avenue of respect and it going both ways, can we ask Corey her opinion?
We can.
Your opinion, my opinion as to what?
The motion itself.
Well, I almost have to read it because I didn't quite catch everything that he was saying, but I guess the concern I have is, and I hate to say this, but the concern I have is that Ellen may not be considering the position. Just because of the comments that were made about her at meetings, and the fact that it was stated out there about her being tainted. Ellen is a strong person and she makes her own opinions up. And there was no tainting in the office, there was no pushing her, leading her to thinking differently. That was all coming from you guys. And it really kind of put, you know, we talked about this before she went on vacation and she's going to be thinking it over the weekend. And she may or may not even consider the position. She may be willing to stay on until you decide on where you want to go with this. For the simple fact of helping me out, knowing elections is coming up and we have a bunch of training that's going to be starting to come along, but I just don't know, you know. But I guess the thing is if she decides not to, I think that it is a good idea for you guys to look at the job description, because if you're gonna be going back out there and looking to hire somebody, you know, you need to have it defined exactly what they're gonna be doing. And I know there's always that segment that says, and any other things directed, but people like to know, what is it? Are they gonna be a planning or assistant, you know? And is that what they wanna do? They may not want even that position. They might just want clerical, you know? So I don't know how to respond to that. That's my opinion. But yeah, I do think that the council needs to sit down and decide where they want to go with the positions in the office. What are you looking for? You know, because I feel like we're being tugged in so many different directions that you want this and you want that and you want that, and there's so many expectations, but yet it's never really been defined. It's just assumptions that we're supposed to be doing this or doing that, but yet we've never been told we were supposed to, or that was now part of our job description.
And I do think that, you know, as was mentioned by Councilman Rickard, we need to address that. We've talked about that.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know, you and Paul and I talked about very specifically clarifying what the expectations are and coming to agreement. Because having expectations and having agreements are not always the same thing. And so, what is that? And you have mentioned that you and Joe have a lot of ideas. We need to create the environment, the culture, to encourage more of that initiative and make sure that it's within the expectations, so that people are saying, you know, I didn't go outside my bounds and I did the above and beyond. What is the expectation, you know, what is the recognition for that? So I think part of it is clearly identifying so that the council isn't confused saying, well, I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Well, if you didn't understand that, and the council didn't make that clear, then there's this disappointment. If it's clear and you choose not to do it, well, there's consequences of that. But if it's clear that you're not supposed to be doing that and somebody's holding you accountable for that, that's wrong on the council's part. And so those are the things we need to obviously clarify, that what is it we are expecting, you know, in a big picture, and to what level of detail do we get involved? And to what level do we say, if this is getting done in a general area, how you do it is you and your staff. If that's what the council designates, then the council needs to say, you're getting the results. Our concern is not how. These things are happening. If the council wants to be more micromanaging, here's what you do and here's how you are to do it, then the staff can say, I can work with that or I can't. But that clearly has to be defined. What do we have? What requirements do we have? What expectations do we have? What are you understanding? And are we in agreement? That's an appropriate role for the personnel we have and the number of people we have. And so I think that back to the tainting, I would have to go back and see how that reads. I know that Councilmember Rainville, I recall her using the word tainted, And I would want to make clear that I was not under the impression at all that it had anything to do with Ellen. But it had to do with Councilmember Rainville's perception of tainting the process. It really, it didn't besmirch Ellen. Ellen didn't do anything wrong. Ellen didn't, she's coming in trying to do the job she had. And regarding her requesting references, certainly within her purview to do so. I think that the problem that was discussed at the meeting was the staff at the time just didn't know if it was right until they heard from the council and felt it was right. That had nothing to do with Ellen, and I don't think, that there's any negative that should be construed towards Ellen in that whole process.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the minutes are getting done right now, and we're working on that, and unfortunately, Ellen actually took that section home and typed it on her own, so she could hear back what was being said. She was very upset about it. So it was very evident and clear that it was pinpoint to her and her capabilities of being just clerical, because that's all Councilmember Rainville could see based on the comments that were made. She was only hired to be a temporary right now until you guys decided to hire her full-time. So she's doing clerical. She's doing above and beyond that, and I didn't know that we needed to basically reassure everybody that she is totally capable. I mean, this has just gotten way out of hand, in my opinion.
Mayor Pilar,
Councilmember Ricker.
we do have a motion, to, approve and at least offer Ellen the position. I think we move forward with that motion. It's her choice whether she accepts that or not. If she doesn't accept it, obviously, then we have to face that hurdle when we get there. But along with that, if she does accept the position, like I said, I believe that we need to, on our next month's meeting agenda, us as a council start talking about and discussing what everybody's expectations for the office and roles are.
Yeah, I think we start with with the conversation you and Corey and I have had, and say, here's what we've discussed, and get the rest of the council's input on it. I mean, we've got a good starting point, because we've already had the discussions for extended period of time, and I think it's certainly a good starting point, and round it out with whatever the rest of the council thinks. So we should be a good leg up on it already, so. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Adjourned.
Is the motion that was approved then that whole entire thing?
Yep.